All right, guys, let's focus in. I believe this is the last problem we did on Friday, yes? So, the last two that we have, and actually ends up being we have two problems left, are these two here. Now, I realized later we could have probably finished this up on Friday, but that's fine. Use substitution, x equals 2 tangent of theta. 0 is less than theta is less than pi over 2. To write the following as a trigonometric function. All this is saying 0 is less than theta is less than pi over 2 are angles between 0 and pi over 2 in the first quadrant, which means its value is going to be positive. We don't have a negative. So x is 2 tangent of theta. So what we're going to do is plug this in for x. So what we're going to do is plug that in for x. And if we do that, we get the square root of 4 plus 2 tangent of theta squared. Questions on this so far? Now, our next step, we're going to need to simplify our 2 tangent of theta squared. And since we're squaring a single term, we end up squaring both terms, telling us that we have 4 tangent squared of theta. Now, this seems like an odd step, but we do need to simplify the radical. Now, we do have tangent squared. And according to our reference page or our Pythagorean identities, tangent squared of theta plus 1 is equal to secant squared. That there's just by definition. Well, this here looks very similar to our tangent squared plus 1. The only difference is that here we have a common factor of what? 4. I can factor that out, which would put tangent squared by itself plus 1. I did flip the two terms, but I just did that so that they look more similar. So the plus 1's from the 4. Yeah, I did flip it. It's really the same as 1 plus tangent squared plus 1. But by this, now, I flipped the terms because 4 plus tangent squared is the same as tangent squared. Yeah, we just factored the 4 out of 4 here, and this gave us our 1. Other questions? Now this tangent squared plus 1 matches up with our tangent squared plus 1 in the formula, so I can replace it with secant squared. And the reason this is helpful, especially with reducing this here, is I have a single term. I have 4 secant squared. According to we can break this down according to our radical properties. If I have two things multiplied inside the radical, it is the same as the radical of both being multiplied together. So the square root of 4 secant squared is the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of secant squared. Well, the square root of 4 is what? Square root of secant squared is secant. So the answer for this here is 2 secant theta. Now, realistically, we could have jumped from here to here just fine. I did that in between steps so that we can see how it reduces and goes down. Questions on these here? So really, for the most part here, if we can get it to a single term, nothing, just something being multiplied together, not added, we can reduce the radical and we're done. I think it might be helpful to see one more of these. So we're going to use substitution, x equals sine, or 3 sine of theta, to write the following as a trigonometric function. So the first thing we can do is plug 3 sine of theta in for x, which is going to give us the square root of 9 minus the quotient of 3 sine in quotient squared. But we will need to simplify our 3 sine of theta squared. And since it's a single term, we don't have 3 plus sine, just 3 times sine. So 3 sine of theta times 3 sine of theta is 9 sine squared of theta. And kind of as we saw in the last one, we do have a greatest common factor of 9. And we can factor that out. Questions on this so far? So we squared 3 sine of theta. We just squared it. Since it's a single term, we just essentially square both terms. We're multiplying it by itself. Now we have a greatest common factor of 9. We factored it out. And then according to our theorems, sine squared plus cosine squared of theta is 1. Or another way we can say it is cosine squared is equal to 1 minus sine squared. We can replace our 1 minus sine squared with cosine squared of theta. Questions on this here? And the reason we use the cosine squared of theta is equal to 1 minus sine squared is, well, the formula had 1 minus sine squared. So that's the one I want to use. Square root of 9. Square root of cosine squared. Questions on this here? We're ready for the next part. That's it.